Late afternoon light poured through my kitchen window in Portland, catching the crystal glasses lined along the counter. The dining table wore white linen, fresh lilies and roses from downtown, filling the air with warmth I hoped my mother might notice. Boxes from the catering company waited in the corner. $800 worth of carefully chosen dishes: chicken parmesan for Mom, lasagna for Dad, grilled salmon for Haley, steak for Colin. Even a triple-layer chocolate cake that cost more than my weekly groceries. My little house, modest but mine, felt almost grand today. We hadn't gathered in months. I wanted tonight to remind them, and myself, that we were still family. Just the five of us. No crowds. I never liked crowds anyway. At midnight, an email arrived. Anonymous. Subject line, for Marceline. Inside, 2 lines and a video file. Watch this and find out how your family really treats you. I clicked play. Everything changed. I had spent weeks planning this dinner. Every detail mattered because somehow I believed perfection could hold us together. The menu alone took me 14 days to finalize. I called my mother 3 times to confirm she still preferred chicken parmesan the way she used to make it when I was small, back when Sunday dinners meant something other than obligation. My house sat in a quiet neighborhood in southeast Portland, 20 minutes from downtown. It was not large, 1,000 square feet, maybe less. But it was mine. I had bought it 2 years ago with money I saved from freelance writing projects I took on after my day job at the marketing firm. The kind of projects I worked on while my college friends went to happy hours and weekend trips to Cannon Beach. I had always been the responsible one. The one who worked double shifts at the diner on Hawthorne while Haley and Colin were still in high school. The one who applied for every scholarship so our parents would not have to pay a cent toward my education. They never asked me to do it. I just did, and somewhere along the way it became expected. After college, when Haley moved to Seattle and could not afford rent, I started sending her money. $500 at first, then $800. Then $1,000 every month, plus extra for emergencies that seemed to happen every other week. Colin called when his car broke down, when his girlfriend needed help with bills, when he wanted to take a trip to California and was short a few $100s. My parents never asked outright. They just mentioned things in passing. The mortgage was tight this month. The furnace needed repairs. The property taxes went up again. I sent the money. I always sent the money. I told myself it was love. That this was what families did, that my stability meant I owed them something for the years they fed and raised me, even if those years were not perfect, even if I had put myself through college, even if I was tired all the time and had not taken a real vacation in 5 years. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was my 32nd birthday, and I wanted to gather everyone under one roof, to sit together and talk and laugh like we used to, or like I imagined we used to. My memories of childhood were hazy now, softened by time and wishful thinking. Maybe we were never that close, but I wanted to believe we could be. I moved through the house one last time, adjusting picture frames, wiping counters that were already spotless. I caught my reflection in the living room mirror. My hair was pulled back neatly. I wore a deep green sweater that brought out my eyes, not glamorous, but presentable. I imagined them walking through the door, the warmth, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. A flicker of unease stirred in my chest, but I pushed it down. By 11:30, I sat on the couch with tea cooling between my hands. The house was quiet, the table still set. I opened my laptop to check work emails before bed. That was when I saw it. An unread message from an address I did not recognize. Subject line plain and deliberate. For Marceline. I hovered over the trash icon. Spam, I thought. But something about the way my name was typed made me pause. I clicked. 2 lines of text. Watch this video and find out how your family really treats you. No greeting, no signature, just a single video file attached. My pulse quickened. I stared at the attachment. A dozen reasons not to click it ran through my mind. Viruses, scams, bad jokes. But curiosity had already taken root. I clicked. The video player opened. The image was grainy at first, colors muted. Then it sharpened. I recognized the kitchen immediately. bright cabinets, the scuffed wooden table at my sister's apartment in Seattle. Around it sat my parents, Haley and Colin, wine glasses and beer bottles scattered between them, their faces flushed, voices overlapping in drunken ease. I leaned closer, my hand tightening around the mug. The sound was low at first. Someone adjusted the camera angle, and the voices grew clearer. My mother spoke first, light and casual, just before taking a sip of wine. "We only really like Marceline when she sends us money." The words hung in the air, suspended between the screen and my ears, impossible to pull back. My father lifted his bottle in a mock toast. His laugh followed, deep and careless, as if my life had been reduced to a private joke they had shared 1,000 times before. "Yeah," he said. "The more money she sends, the more we like her." They all laughed. Loud, unrestrained, the kind of laughter that comes when there is no thought of consequence. Haley leaned back in her chair, wiping at the corners of her eyes. "Oh my God, you are terrible," she said between giggles. "But seriously, it is so funny watching her try to dress up for things. She has zero taste. She looks pathetic in those outfits she picks out." My gaze dropped involuntarily to the sweater I was wearing, the one I had chosen so carefully for tomorrow. Colin shook his head, grinning. "I cannot believe she is having her birthday at home instead of taking us somewhere nice. What is the point of having money if you do not spend it on us?" "She is probably just too afraid of big crowds," Haley added with a smirk. More laughter. Then Colin shrugged. "The best part is we do not even have to give her expensive gifts. Honestly, I do not want to give her anything." Haley jumped in eagerly. "Right. She gives us way too little anyway. All she covers is rent, and maybe throws me 100 or 2 extra. It is not enough." I felt my stomach twist. I sent her nearly $1,000 every month on top of her rent. My mother nodded as though approving a business plan. "We need to figure out how to hint she should take better care of her family. Make her feel guilty about not doing enough." And then my father sealed it. He raised his bottle once more, eyes glinting. "To our little ATM." The clink of glass rang in my ears. I did not even realize my hands were shaking until the mug slipped from my grip and hit the rug with a dull thud. I sat frozen, the word echoing again and again until the video finally ended and the screen went black, leaving only my reflection staring back at me. For a long moment, I just sat there. The word ATM ricocheted inside my head. The ache in my chest was sharp, but it was not the familiar dull hurt I had learned to live with. This was cleaner, hotter, anger that cut through the fog of years. I thought about the teenage shifts at the diner while my friends went to football games, the scholarships I fought for so my parents would not have to pay a cent, the freelance projects I took on instead of going to parties, every rent payment, every emergency transfer, every time I said no to something I wanted because they needed more. And for what? So they could toast to how much they liked me when the checks cleared? Confrontation would give them the stage. Let them twist my reaction into proof that I was overreacting. No. Silence would be louder. I opened my browser and typed one word. Hawaii. Flights left at 4 in the morning on my birthday. Perfect. I booked the most expensive penthouse suite I could find in Honolulu, the kind of place I had never allowed myself to even dream about before. Next, I called a locksmith. "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, I told him. "Change every lock, it is urgent." He took down the details without question. Finally, I pulled up the catering invoice. $800 flashed on the screen. I called the restaurant, confirmed the order, then changed the delivery address to the downtown homeless shelter on West Burnside. The coordinator on the other end sounded surprised, then grateful. I ended the call and sat back, feeling the faintest trace of something I had not felt in years. Satisfaction. They would show up expecting a celebration, but the door would be locked, the food gone, and I would be thousands of miles away, sipping something cold on a balcony overlooking the Pacific. The plan settled over me like armor, each step a quiet severing of the ties they had wrapped so tightly around my life. I did not feel sad. I did not feel guilty. I felt awake. For the first time in years, I was making a choice that had nothing to do with anyone else. I set my alarm for 2 in the morning and went to bed. Sleep came easier than I expected. The alarm went off at 2. I had barely slept, but my suitcase was already by the door, packed with clothes I had chosen for no one's approval but my own. I dressed quickly, pulled my hair into a loose knot, and slipped out into the dark, quiet street. The Uber driver did not ask questions, and I did not offer answers. The ride to Portland International Airport was silent, except for the occasional turn signal and the hum of tires on pavement. By 4, I was at the gate, boarding pass in hand. For the first time in years, I was going somewhere without carrying someone else's weight. The flight was long, but strangely calm. I watched movies, sipped bad coffee, and let the steady roar of the engines drown out every lingering echo of their voices from that video. When we landed in Honolulu, warm Hawaiian air wrapped around me like something I did not know I had been missing. By the time I checked into the penthouse suite, the afternoon sun had begun its slow drop toward the ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the view like a living painting. My attention kept drifting to the phone in my bag. I knew what time it was back home. 5 in the evening. The first call came from my mother, her name lighting up the screen. Then my father. Then Haley, then Colin, one after another. Relentless. The vibration on the nightstand seemed almost alive, rattling against the wood. I let each call go to voicemail. When the ringing finally stopped, the text messages began. "We are here. Where are you? This is not funny. Answer us. We are waiting outside." I scrolled through them slowly, imagining them standing on my porch. Confusion turning to irritation, irritation to panic. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I opened the video file. Their own words, their own laughter. I attached it to a group message and typed only one sentence. "Stay away from the toxic family." I hit send. For a moment, I watched the little delivered icon appear, knowing the message had landed in all the places that mattered. Then, I powered the phone off completely and set it aside. The silence that followed was absolute. I stepped out onto the balcony. The ocean stretched endlessly before me. I let it carry me into the next breath. The first morning in Honolulu, I woke to the sound of waves instead of my phone buzzing with another request for money. I lay in bed for a long time, just listening, letting the absence of demands sink into my bones. It felt unnatural at first, as if I had forgotten to do something urgent. I filled my days with everything I used to tell myself I could not afford, not because I did not have the money, but because I did not believe I was worth spending it on. I ate breakfast on the terrace with the ocean stretching out in front of me, ordered room service just because I felt like it, wandered through boutiques without checking price tags. By the 3rd day, my skin was warm from the sun. My hair smelled faintly of salt water. I had stopped checking the time. I took long walks on the beach, let the waves catch my ankles, and let go of the voice in my head that measured every choice by how it might affect someone else. Evenings were slower. I sat in the hotel lounge with a glass of wine, watching strangers laugh and talk without thinking of the next bill I had to cover for someone else. For the first time in years, I did not feel tethered to anyone's expectations. The disbelief lingered. It was strange to realize I could go an entire day without a single interaction with my family, and not only survive, but feel lighter for it. By the 6th day, that strangeness had shifted into something sturdier. The constant hum of guilt that had lived under my skin for decades was quiet. When I finally powered my phone back on, it was only to see who, if anyone, could still reach me. That was when I saw her message. Back home in Portland, a message from an unfamiliar number appeared. "Hi, Marceline. It is Elena. Can we meet?" Just the two of us. It is important. I had always liked Elena, Colin's girlfriend, though we had never been especially close. Something in her tone made me agree without hesitation. We settled on a quiet cafe downtown the next afternoon. She arrived looking more nervous than I had ever seen her, scanning the room before sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice low. I nodded, waiting. Her hands curled around her coffee cup. "I am the one who sent you that video." For a second, I just stared at her. She nodded. That night, I was at Haley's place. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, they were all talking about you, laughing, calling you an ATM, making fun of your clothes. I started recording on my phone because I knew you would never believe it otherwise. The memory of that grainy footage tightened my chest. Why anonymously? I did not want Colin to know, but after you cut them off, I started seeing him for what he really is. He did not care about you losing contact. He only cared that his rent was not being paid anymore. So I broke up with him. I felt a surge of unexpected gratitude. You did not have to tell me this, but I am glad you did. She hesitated before leaning closer. There is something else. They are angry, Marceline. I have heard them talking about ways to shame you publicly, posting things online, twisting the story so you look like the selfish one. They think if enough people believe it, you will have to come back to defend yourself. The air between us seemed to sharpen. Thank you for warning me, I said, steadying my voice. I will be ready for whatever they try. Elena's warning proved true within a week. The first time I saw them outside my office building, I thought it was a coincidence. My parents stood near the entrance pretending to look at their phones. But when I walked past without acknowledging them, my mother called out, voice trembling just enough to sound pitiable. Marceline, please, just 5 minutes. I did not stop. Security escorted me inside, their eyes following me all the way to the elevators. Then came the messages through mutual friends. People I had not spoken to in years suddenly checking in, asking if I had really abandoned my family. It was always the same story. They were struggling. They did not understand why I had cut them off. They just wanted to talk. The guilt was neatly packaged, designed to slip past my defenses. When that did not work, they got bolder. My bank called to alert me to multiple failed attempts to log into my accounts. The representative confirmed the attempts came from Seattle. I changed every password, set up new security questions, and added two-factor authentication. One afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw Haley leaning against the hood of a car across the street. She did not say anything, just smirked as if daring me to approach. I walked to my own car without looking her way, heart pounding, but steps steady. After that, security insisted on walking me out most evenings. At first, I resisted. Then I realized it was not about fear. It was about refusing to give them any opening to twist the narrative. No matter how many tactics they tried, I did not respond. I would not give them the argument they wanted, the chance to paint me as the aggressor. I went home each night to a locked door and the silence I had fought for, holding on to it like the most valuable thing I had ever owned. My father tried once more, stepping directly into my path outside the building. "We need to talk," he said, his tone caught somewhere between pleading and command. Before I could respond, security intervened, guiding me past him and into the waiting car. The effort they poured into chasing me was almost impressive in a grim way. They had never shown that kind of persistence when it came to anything else, only when there was money involved. I stayed silent through all of it. No texts, no calls, no public defense. The truth did not need defending, and I was not going to step back into their arena just so they could twist my words. Each failed attempt on their part only solidified something inside me. Whatever they were planning next, I was determined to be ready. I had locked the door, changed the locks, built new boundaries they could not cross. And for the first time in my life, I was keeping the key. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with people you loved? How did you find the strength to walk away? Share your story below, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your worth and reclaiming your peace.
My brother Cameron got everything first. First bike. First car. First college acceptance letter framed on the wall. First real job with a salary mom could brag about at church. First everything. I was born second 3 years later, and spent my entire childhood hearing about Cameron's accomplishments while mine were footnotes. Cameron made honor roll again. Mom would announce at dinner. I made honor roll too, but nobody framed my report cards. Cameron played varsity football. Captain senior year. The local newspaper did a feature on him. Dad kept copies in his office for years. I played tennis, made it to state finals junior year. Dad forgot to come to the match because he was helping Cameron move into his dorm at UNC. The pattern was set early. Cameron was the success story. I was the supporting character in his narrative. After high school, Cameron went to UNC on a partial academic scholarship. Studied business. Joined the best fraternity. Graduated with honors and 3 job offers. Chose a consulting firm in Charlotte. Started at $78,000. I went to a small liberal arts college 2 hours away. Studied economics and environmental science. An unusual combination that made Dad ask, "What kind of job does that get you?" I'm interested in sustainable development and coastal economics. So, nothing practical. I worked through college. Waited tables, tutored, did landscaping during summers. Graduated with $31,000 in student loans that I was determined to pay off as quickly as possible. Cameron graduated debt-free. Mom and Dad had covered what his scholarship didn't. My first job was with a marine conservation nonprofit in Miami. Salary, $34,000. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, ate ramen most nights, and spent my days working on coastal development policy. Cameron's consulting career flourished. By 25, he was making $110,000. Bought a condo in Charlotte's fancy South End neighborhood. Posted photos of it constantly. The skyline views, the rooftop pool, the granite countertops. At 25, I was living in the same studio, driving a 15-year-old Corolla, wearing thrift store clothes to work. Mom called it finding yourself. Dad called it not applying yourself. Cameron called it the struggle years we all go through. Except Cameron hadn't struggled. Not really. What they didn't know, what I never told them, was that I wasn't struggling. I was strategizing. My nonprofit work had connected me with developers, environmental lawyers, and coastal property owners. I learned how coastal real estate worked, how development rights functioned, how environmental regulations affected property values, how smart investors identified undervalued coastal properties. And I was saving everything. Every dollar beyond bare minimum living expenses went into investment accounts. I studied real estate markets obsessively, learned property law, networked quietly with investors and developers. At 27, I made my first purchase. A small beachfront lot in Wilmington that was tangled in environmental permitting issues. Bought it for $140,000. Used every dollar I'd saved plus a small loan. Spent 8 months navigating the permit process. Got approval for a small eco-friendly development. Sold the lot 18 months later for $380,000. Nobody in my family knew. They thought I was still working at the nonprofit, barely making rent. I took that profit and started investing strategically. More coastal properties with development potential. Small beach cottages that could be renovated. Lots that needed environmental clearance that I knew how to obtain. By 30, my real estate portfolio was worth $1.8 million. By 32, $4.2 million. My family still thought I was a struggling nonprofit worker living paycheck to paycheck. Cameron, meanwhile, made partner at his consulting firm. His salary climbed to $210,000 plus bonuses. He bought a bigger condo, got engaged to Melissa, a pharmaceutical sales rep. They posted endless photos of expensive dinners, weekend trips to Miami, wine tastings in Napa. I still lived simply. Moved from the studio to a 1-bedroom apartment above a surf shop. Drove a 5-year-old Honda. Wore shorts and t-shirts most days. Worked remotely now. I'd transitioned to consulting on coastal development projects while managing my growing property portfolio. At 34, I saw the opportunity I'd been waiting for. The Pelican Bay Resort, a struggling beachfront property in Topsail Beach, North Carolina. 32 units, restaurant, pool, direct beach access. Beautiful bones but catastrophically mismanaged. Failing environmental compliance, outdated infrastructure, mounting debt. It was going into foreclosure. I spent 3 months doing due diligence. Environmental assessments, structural surveys, financial analysis, development potential studies. The property needed $2.4 million in upgrades and environmental remediation. But it sat on 7 acres of prime beachfront. Once properly managed and brought into environmental compliance, it could be worth $18 to $22 million. I structured a complex acquisition. Used $3.1 million from my portfolio, brought in 2 silent investor partners, secured financing for the rest. Total acquisition and renovation budget, $11.7 million. At 35 years old, I became the majority owner of the Pelican Bay Resort. Spent the next 18 months executing a complete transformation. Environmental remediation. Infrastructure upgrades. Renovated all 32 units. Rebuilt the restaurant. New pool, new landscaping, new everything. But I did it sustainably. Solar panels, water reclamation systems, native plant landscaping, turtle-friendly lighting. The resort became a model for sustainable coastal development. Got featured in environmental tourism publications. Occupancy rates climbed to 87%. Revenue tripled. Current valuation, $23.5 million. My personal net worth, including the resort and other properties, $31.2 million. My family thought I was still working at a nonprofit, probably making $45,000 a year. I'd purchased one of the resort's units for my personal use, a 3-bedroom beachfront condo on the top floor. Nothing extravagant by resort standards, but it had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, a wraparound balcony and direct beach access. I'd never mentioned it to my family. Never invited them to visit. They didn't ask about my life anyway, so there was nothing to explain. The resort operated under a management company name, Coastal Horizon Properties LLC. My name appeared nowhere in public records except buried in corporate documents. The staff knew me as Mr. Donovan, but most had never seen me. I managed remotely and kept a low profile during my occasional visits. Only the resort manager, Patricia, and a few key staff knew what I looked like. Then Cameron called. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting on my condo balcony reviewing quarterly financial reports when my phone rang. Ethan. How's it going, little brother? Hey Cameron. I'm good. Listen, I'm actually calling about something important. You know how you've been struggling financially? I hadn't been struggling, but, okay. Melissa and I were talking and we want to help. We know you've been living in that crappy apartment working at the nonprofit for basically no money. We want to do something for you. That's nice of you, but... Remember that beach condo you mentioned years ago? The one in Topsail Beach. My blood went cold. What about it? Well, I did some research. Found the property records. That little condo you bought as an investment. He said it like investment was a cute fantasy. It's worth something now. Maybe $180,000 based on comparable sales in the area. Cameron. Let me finish. I know you probably can't afford the property taxes and maintenance. Small condos like that are money pits. So I took the initiative, found a buyer through a real estate agent friend. Cash offer, quick close. $185,000. That'll clear your debts, give you a fresh start. You did what? I helped you. The buyer is motivated, ready to close next week. I already started the paperwork. Since I have that old power of attorney from when you were doing that project in Costa Rica. Remember, you gave me access to handle stuff while you were out of the country? I can sign on your behalf. Easy. That power of attorney. I'd forgotten about it. 5 years ago, during a 3-month conservation project, I'd given Cameron limited power of attorney to handle a single property transaction if needed. It was supposed to expire after that transaction. Apparently he still had the document. Cameron, you can't sell my property. Bro, I'm helping you. $185,000 is more than you'd get listing it yourself. The buyer even waives inspection. You should be thanking me. I'm not selling. Ethan, be realistic. You can't afford to keep a beach condo. The taxes alone are probably killing you. Take the money, clear your debts, start fresh. Cameron, listen to me very carefully. That property is not for sale. You don't have authority to sell it. I have power of attorney. For a specific transaction that concluded 5 years ago. That authority expired. If you attempt to sell my property, you'll be committing fraud. Silence. Fraud? Jesus, Ethan, I'm trying to help you. Then stop. Don't sign anything. Don't talk to any buyers. Leave my property alone. Mom and Dad agree with me. We all think. You discussed my property with Mom and Dad? Of course. We're worried about you. This sale is the best thing for your financial situation. I hung up. Immediately called Patricia, my resort manager. Patricia, I need you to do something urgently. Someone may attempt to fraudulently sell my personal condo. I need security increased and I need documentation of ownership posted clearly. Mr. Donovan, I'll handle it immediately. Should I alert our legal team? Yes. And Patricia, the person attempting the sale is my brother. He's operating under an expired power of attorney. If he shows up at the property or contacts resort staff, I want to be notified immediately. Understood, sir. I sat on my balcony watching the waves, processing what Cameron had tried to do. My phone buzzed. Family group chat. Cameron just tried to help Ethan sell his little condo. He got defensive. Mom, he's probably embarrassed about his financial situation. Dad, the sale sounds smart. Maybe we should talk to him together. Cameron, I already found a buyer. $185,000 cash. Should have the deal done by next week. Mom, that's wonderful. He needs the money. I stared at the messages. They were planning to force through a sale of my property. Property worth. I pulled up recent appraisals. Approximately $1.2 million, since it was a premium unit in a now luxury resort. They were trying to sell my $1.2 million condo for $185,000. I didn't respond to the group chat. Instead, I called my attorney. David, I need help with a family situation that's about to become a legal situation. After explaining everything, David was quiet for a moment. Ethan, to be clear, your brother is attempting to sell your personal residence, which is part of a resort you own, for a fraction of its value, using expired legal authority? Correct. That's attempted theft, fraud, and possibly real estate fraud. We need to shut this down immediately. Over the next 24 hours, David worked quickly. Sent cease and desist letters. Contacted the buyer's agent, who was shocked to learn the actual value and ownership situation. Filed notices with the county recorder's office. Prepared documentation for potential criminal charges. Then Cameron showed up at the resort. Patricia called me at 2 p.m. Wednesday. Mr. Donovan, your brother just arrived at the front desk with a real estate agent and a couple who appear to be buyers. He's demanding access to your condo to show it. Don't grant access. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I was already at the resort, had been staying in my condo since Cameron's call, anticipating this exact scenario. I took the elevator to the lobby. Wore what I always wore, shorts, t-shirt, flip-flops. Looked like any other beach bum, not the owner of a $23.5 million resort. Cameron stood at the front desk arguing with Patricia. Behind him, a nervous real estate agent and a middle-aged couple who looked excited about buying a beach condo. I don't care about your policies, Cameron was saying loudly. I have power of attorney for the owner. I'm authorized to access the property. Patricia remained calm. Sir, as I've explained, that power of attorney is expired and invalid. We cannot grant access without Mr. Donovan's explicit permission. This is ridiculous. It's my brother's condo. He's just being difficult because he's embarrassed about his finances. I approached the desk. Hey, Cameron. He spun around. Ethan. Finally. Tell your desk clerk here to let us see the condo. These are the buyers, Tom and Sandra. They're ready to make an offer. I told you the property isn't for sale. Ethan, come on. Be reasonable. $185,000 is a great price for a small condo like this. The real estate agent was looking around the resort lobby. The marble floors, the custom lighting, the oceanfront views through floor-to-ceiling windows. You could see her recalculating. Mr. Donovan, she said carefully, can I ask what comparable sales you're basing your valuation on? Because this resort appears to be quite upscale and... The condo isn't for sale at any price, I said. Cameron grabbed my arm. Stop being stubborn. You need this money. We're trying to help you. Patricia cleared her throat. Mr. Cameron Donovan, I need to inform you that resort security has been notified of this situation. Additionally, our legal team has prepared documentation regarding your attempted fraudulent sale of resort property. Cameron stared at her. Resort property? It's my brother's condo. Yes, Patricia said calmly. Your brother's private residence, which happens to be within the Pelican Bay Resort, which your brother owns. The silence was deafening. What? Cameron said. I'm the owner of the Pelican Bay Resort, I said quietly. Have been for 3 years. The condo you're trying to sell for $185,000 is worth approximately $1.2 million and is my private residence. Cameron's face went through several colors. You own this resort? All 32 units, the restaurant, 7 acres of beachfront property. Current valuation, $23.5 million. The real estate agent made a small choking sound. Tom and Sandra, the potential buyers, were backing away slowly. That's impossible, Cameron said. You work at a nonprofit. You drive a shitty car. You live in a crappy apartment. I live here, I corrected. The apartment in Wilmington is an investment property I rent out. This is my primary residence. Has been for 2 years. But you don't have money. Mom and Dad said. Mom and Dad assumed. You all assumed. I never confirmed anything. You just never asked enough questions to learn the truth. Patricia had her tablet out. Mr. Donovan, should I brief your brother on the legal situation? Our attorneys have prepared quite comprehensive documentation. Please. Patricia turned to Cameron. Mr. Cameron Donovan, you have attempted to sell property you don't own, using expired legal authorization, for approximately 15% of its actual value. This constitutes attempted fraud, real estate fraud, and theft. Our legal team has prepared criminal complaints with local law enforcement and civil suits for damages. Cameron's face had gone pale. I was trying to help him. By stealing his property? I asked calmly. I didn't know. You let me think you were broke. You assumed I was broke. You never asked about my actual financial situation. You just decided you knew, and then you tried to sell my property without permission. The real estate agent was backing toward the exit. I need to go. I had no idea about any of this. My client was told this was a legitimate sale. Your client was told correctly by my brother that this was my property, I said. What he failed to mention is that he had no authority to sell it and it's worth 6 times what he quoted you. She fled. Tom and Sandra followed quickly. Cameron stood in the middle of my resort lobby looking lost. Ethan, I don't understand. How do you own a resort? Where did you get millions of dollars? I invested strategically for 15 years. Worked in coastal development, learned property law, bought undervalued properties, built a portfolio. This resort was my largest acquisition. Bought it in foreclosure, renovated it, turned it around. But you live like you're poor. I live simply because I don't need to impress anyone. I drive a reliable car because I don't care about status symbols. I wear shorts and t-shirts because I live at the beach. None of that has anything to do with my net worth. Which is what? His voice was hollow. Around $31 million, mostly in property equity. He sat down heavily on one of the lobby's custom furniture pieces. A chair that cost $2,400. Jesus Christ. Patricia's phone buzzed. Mr. Donovan, local police are here. They'd like statements regarding the attempted fraud. 2 officers entered the lobby. I spent the next hour giving statements, providing documentation, walking them through Cameron's attempted sale. Cameron sat silently through all of it, looking increasingly devastated as the legal implications became clear. After the police left, with documentation and a promise to review the case with the DA, Cameron finally spoke. Am I going to jail? That depends on several factors, I said. Whether the DA decides to prosecute. Whether you make restitution for damages. Whether I decide to press charges. You'd send your own brother to jail? You tried to steal property worth over $1 million from me. What would you call that? A mistake. I thought I was helping. You thought you knew better than me about my own life and my own property. You assumed I was incompetent and needed your rescue. You never asked permission. You just decided. Mom's voice came from behind us. What is happening? I turned. Mom and Dad stood in the lobby entrance looking confused. Mom. Dad. What are you doing here? Cameron called, Dad said. Said there was some confusion about the condo sale. We came to help mediate. There's no confusion, I said. Cameron attempted to sell my property. This condo in this resort that I own, without my permission, using expired legal authorization for a fraction of its value. This resort. Mom looked around slowly. Ethan, what is Cameron talking about? You owning a resort. Patricia stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan, I'm Patricia Chin, resort manager. Your son Ethan is the owner of the Pelican Bay Resort. Has been for 3 years. He acquired the property in foreclosure and executed a comprehensive renovation that transformed it into one of the region's premier sustainable coastal resorts. Mom sat down next to Cameron, both of them staring at me like I was a stranger. Dad walked to the lobby windows, looking out at the pristine beach, the renovated pool area, the restaurant terrace. You own all of this? Yes. How? 15 years of strategic real estate investment. Started with a small lot in Wilmington, built from there. I specialize in coastal properties with environmental challenges that I know how to resolve. But you work at a nonprofit, Mom said weakly. I did. Past tense. 10 years ago. I've been a private consultant and property investor for the last decade. You just never asked about my current work. We thought you were struggling, she said. Why? Because I don't post photos of expensive dinners on social media? Because I don't drive a luxury car? Because I don't talk about money constantly like Cameron? Cameron flinched at that. You let us think you needed help, Dad said. I let you assume what you wanted to assume. You needed me to be the struggling younger brother so Cameron could be the successful one. It made the family dynamics work. I didn't correct you because honestly, it was easier than dealing with your expectations. We would have been proud of you. Mom said. Would you? Or would you have just treated me differently? Started asking for money, wanting investments, expecting me to solve your problems? I've seen what happens when families find out someone is wealthy. It changes everything. Patricia's tablet buzzed. Mr. Donovan, your attorney is on video call. He'd like to discuss next steps. I took the call in my private office, a small space off the main lobby that most guests didn't even know existed. David appeared on screen. Ethan, the DA is very interested in this case. Attempted real estate fraud for this amount is serious. What do you want to do? I thought about it. About Cameron sitting in my lobby, devastated. About my parents, confused and hurt. About 15 years of being underestimated. What are the options? Full prosecution, he could face felony charges, prison time. Or we can negotiate a settlement. Restitution, formal admission of wrongdoing, restraining orders regarding your property, probation. What's your recommendation? Honestly, he's your brother. If you want to preserve any family relationship, settlement is probably better. But that's your call. What he did was serious enough to prosecute fully. Let me talk to him first. I'll call you back. I returned to the lobby. My family sat together on the expensive furniture, looking small and lost. Cameron, let's talk. Privately. We walked out to the beach. The sun was setting, turning the water gold and pink. My beach. My resort. My success that nobody had believed in. I'm sorry, Cameron said immediately. I genuinely thought I was helping. I had no idea you were successful. You seemed like you were struggling and I wanted to fix it. Why did you think I was struggling? Because you live simply. Because you don't talk about money. Because you're not showy like. He stopped. Like you. I finished gently. Yeah. Like me. I base everything on appearances. The condo, the car, the social media post. I measure success by visible status. You don't do any of that, so I assumed you had nothing. I have everything that matters to me. Business I built. Properties I love. Work that aligns with my values. Financial security. Peace. And a family that completely misunderstood you. Yes. We walked in silence for a while. What happens now? Cameron asked. The DA thing. Am I going to prison? That depends. On what? On whether you understand what you did wrong. Not just the illegal part. The fundamental assumption that you knew better than me about my own life. I do understand. I really do. I made assumptions based on appearances and almost destroyed something you built. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I need more than sorry. I need real change. Can you do that? What kind of change? Stop measuring success by status symbols. Stop assuming you know better than other people about their lives. Stop trying to fix things that aren't broken. Can you do that? He was quiet for a long time. I can try. I want to try. Then here's what happens. You make formal restitution, $50,000 for legal fees, damages, and my time dealing with this mess. You attend counseling to address why you felt entitled to control my property. You stay away from all my business affairs unless explicitly invited. Any violation of those terms and I prosecute fully. Understand? Yes. All of it. I'll do it. And Cameron, If we rebuild a relationship, it has to be real. Not based on money or status or comparisons. Just two brothers who actually know each other. Can you do that? I'd like to try, he said quietly. We walked back to the resort. Mom and Dad were still in the lobby looking exhausted. We're going to handle this privately, I told them. Cameron will make restitution and we'll work on rebuilding trust. But we need to establish some boundaries. What kind of boundaries? Mom asked. You don't get to make assumptions about my life anymore. You don't get to decide what's best for me. You don't get to treat me like the struggling younger brother who needs rescue. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be based on who I actually am. Dad nodded slowly. Fair. More than fair. We owe you a massive apology, Ethan. For years of not seeing you. I accept the apology. But apologies are just words. I need to see changed behavior. You will, Mom promised. Can we start over? Really get to know you? Maybe. But not today. Today I need you all to leave. Let me process this. They left slowly, Cameron looking back twice with an expression I'd never seen before. Genuine remorse mixed with something like respect. Patricia approached after they'd gone. Mr. Donovan, you handled that with remarkable grace. Thanks, Patricia. Can you do me a favor? Anything. Increase security on my personal residence. Change all access codes. And brief the entire staff. If any member of my family appears on property without my explicit permission, I want to be notified immediately. Consider it done. And sir? For what it's worth, the entire staff is incredibly proud of you. What you built here, how you handled this situation. You're an exceptional leader. I went back to my condo. Stood on the balcony watching the waves, processing everything. My phone buzzed. Text from Cameron. Transferred the first installment of restitution. $10,000. We'll send the rest over the next few months. Starting counseling next week. Thank you for giving me a chance. Then Dad, your mother and I are staying in Wilmington tonight. Can we take you to breakfast tomorrow? No assumptions, no advice. Just listening. I responded to Dad, breakfast works. 9 a.m. There's a cafe in Wilmington I like. I'll text you the address. To Cameron, I didn't respond yet. Words were easy. I needed to see sustained changed behavior. Over the next 3 months, things shifted slowly. Cameron paid the full restitution. Started therapy. Called me weekly, actually asking about my work, my life, my thoughts. Stopped posting showy social media content. Started examining his own relationship with status and success. Mom and Dad visited monthly. Real visits where they asked real questions. Toured my properties. Met my staff. Learned about my work in sustainable development. Started understanding who I actually was rather than who they'd assumed I was. The DA reviewed the case and decided not to prosecute given the restitution and family resolution. The buyer and real estate agent dropped out of the picture entirely, having learned their lesson about due diligence. 6 months after Cameron's attempted sale, he called me from his therapist's office. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you forgive me? Really? I thought about it. I'm working toward forgiveness. It's a process. You tried to steal from me, but you've been doing the work to change. Keep doing that work and we'll get there. Fair. Hey, can I ask you something else? Go ahead. How did you do it? Build all this while we were so busy dismissing you. I stopped needing your validation. Once I realized your approval didn't matter, that I was building for myself, not for an audience, everything became easier. I could focus on the work instead of the performance. That's actually really wise. Therapy's helping you, huh? He laughed. Yeah. Turns out I have some issues with external validation and competitive comparison. Who you? I knew. But I'm glad you're figuring it out. We talked for another hour. Real conversation. Getting to know each other as adults rather than as the roles we'd been assigned as kids. A year after the attempted sale, I invited my family to the resort for Thanksgiving. Gave them real rooms. Nice ones, not my personal residence. Showed them around properly. Let them see what I'd built. At dinner, Dad raised his glass. I want to propose a toast. To Ethan, who built something extraordinary while we were too blind to see it. We're sorry for the years we missed. And we're grateful for the second chance. Everyone drank. Even Cameron, who added, and I'm sorry for almost destroying it through my own stupidity and entitlement. You didn't destroy it, I said. You revealed it. Maybe that needed to happen. Mom was crying. We're so proud of you. Thank you. But I don't need you to be proud. I need you to see me. The real me. That's all I've ever needed. We see you now, she promised. Maybe they did. Or maybe they were starting to. Either way, I had what mattered most. A business I'd built, a life I loved, and finally, a family relationship based on reality instead of assumptions. Cameron never tried to sell my property again. In fact, he became one of my most trusted advisors. His business background, combined with his new self-awareness, made him genuinely helpful. We rebuilt our relationship slowly. Not based on competition or comparison, but on actual respect and understanding. And every time I stood on my balcony watching the sunset over my resort, I thought about how close I'd come to losing it all to someone who thought they knew better. But I hadn't lost it. Because I'd built something strong enough to withstand even family assumptions. And that was worth more than any amount of money. Even $31.2 million.